I'm Vaughn, reporter with WSKG News. I'm here with Joe Burns, current City of Binghamton council member, running for mayor of the City of Binghamton. We're conducting these interviews with every candidate who's on the ballot. Mr. Burns, you're on the Democrat line, and your opponent, Jared Cram, is on the Republican and Conservative lines. And for the structure of this interview, we're just going to take some time to discuss yourself, your candidacy, and then the rest of the time we'll spend talking about policy issues. So thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Vaughn. I love the opportunity to speak to the people of Binghamton.
Great. So I guess let's just start. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your personal and work experiences prior to becoming a member of City Council.
Well, before I was a member of City Council, I had a 25-year career in the movie and television business. I ended up as an assistant director. I began my career as a production assistant, getting people coffee and doing crowd control for shooting a television show called The Equalizer back in the 80s. And I worked my way up to the assistant director position, and it took me a few years to do that, a lot of hard work. And as an assistant director on a movie, you begin a project way before it starts filming. And you start planning. You have meetings with every department, talk about what they need to shoot, and we plan every single shooting day. And on the day of shooting, once we start shooting, the assistant director runs the set. It was my job to know what every department was doing. I had to know what the prop department was doing, what the art department was doing, what the construction department was doing. And it was my job to keep things rolling, keep things moving on budget and on schedule. And at the same time I was doing that on the day, I was planning the next day and the next week. So it was very much like running a small city. And I believe it really prepared me for the city government. So when I got on City Council, I discovered that it was very true. Mm-hmm. And so this is why I decided to run for mayor.
Mm-hmm. Take me a little bit into your time. You've been serving on City Council since 2019. Take me into a little bit of what you've been doing in your work on council.
Well, City Council is about, approving money, for different departments, different things they need. I think that probably the most important thing that I was involved in was the police collaborative, which I was on that with several other community leaders, and we worked on we worked on the police departments and the community and the relationship between the two, and I think we came up with some very good things, and I was quite proud of that.
Mm-hmm. I do want to circle back to that at some point, but walk me through a little bit in your decision to run for mayor. Why did you want to step up from council into the mayor's office?
Well, I love Binghamton, and it's really a part of me. My great-grandparents were married at St. Pat's on October 2nd, 1888. So, that's where our story began. And my wife and I grew up on the west side. We went to Catholic Central. I took her to the prom at Catholic Central. I don't want to tell you how many years ago that was, but it was a while ago. And so we graduated from high school on the west side. Our children all graduated from Binghamton High School. So, when I think of Binghamton, I think of, I don't think of it as just a place on the map. I think of it as people. And my campaign is our campaign. I mean, the people, I have all kinds of volunteers and et cetera. So our campaign really is about people, and it's about families and neighborhoods and small businesses. Mm-hmm. And I on City Council, I could see the divisions that we have within our city, and anything that has been passed in a bipartisan fashion in this city the last 2 years, it's because Joe Burns voted for it. So I want to take that bipartisan energy, and I want to take it into City Hall. I want to take it into the mayor's office, and I want to let people know on every side of town that whether they've been here for 6 generations or if they've been here they're newcomers this year, that they're going to have a mayor that is there for them, that is there to listen to them and be their mayor.
Mm-hmm. A few weeks ago, the Broome County Republican Committee put out a mailer. They highlighted your 2006 federal bankruptcy claim and several other federal tax liens. I wanted to give you the opportunity to explain that situation.
Well, that mailer was full of half-truths and some lies, actually. But the tax liens and let's go back. 20 years ago, I was audited by the IRS. The IRS goes back 10 years in your taxes. They then came up with a list of items that they said that they weren't going to allow me to take out for my taxes. So that was quite a bit of money. I lived here and I worked in New York. They said, "Oh, Binghamton is just a second home. It's not really, you can't take out for your apartment in New York, etc." So my wife and I disagreed with the IRS, and so we began a battle that lasted about 6 years. When we finally came in, and that turned into, because when they come after you, they come after you. So that resulted in the bankruptcy. However, when the agreement was finally reached, it did favor us. And the moment that they signed the agreement, every single lien was satisfied. So that mailer makes it look as if I hadn't paid taxes for all of these years, because the IRS would add interest upon what they said I originally owed. So they had year after year after year on this mailer to make it look like Joe Burns wasn't paying his taxes. And I never went a year without paying my taxes. And so everything was paid for, everything was covered. And I don't think that you should judge someone. Sue and I, as I say, we went to the senior prom together. I'll tell you how many years ago. It was 49 years ago. So, when you go through a marriage and children, etc., you're going to find a time when you're going through a tough time. So you shouldn't be judged by the fact that you went through a tough time. You should be judged by how you came out of that tough time. And we came out stronger, and we have no debt. The only debt we have in the world right now is our house and our 2 leases on our cars. I have a 809, according to our 2 banks, one being American Express. I have an 809 credit score. You don't get an 809 credit score if you're not good with money.
So you're saying at no point in time did you owe excess taxes to the federal government?
The federal government said that I owed. Then we settled it all. So it wasn't that I was not paying my taxes. It was they disagreed with me on how much tax. So we fought to keep our own money. And when I am mayor, I am going to fight for people in Binghamton to keep as much of their money as they possibly can.
Okay.
The same way I fought for mine.
I want to pivot now to policy. First of which, housing. Obviously, one of the issues that's at the forefront of anybody who's trying to live in Binghamton. And I wanted to start with kind of a fact question. Housing and Urban Development puts out figures as for the fair market rent. And I wanted to ask you if you had an estimate on what the HUD's measure of fair market value for a 2-bedroom apartment in the city of Binghamton.
I have not seen that, but my guess would be around $600.
Okay.
Am I close?
It's 902.
902. Well, that doesn't sound very affordable to me for a lot of people within the city of Binghamton.
So what's your plan to get those prices down?
Well, the mayor can't get the prices down. The landlords can charge whatever they want, basically. But what we can do is work with the county, the state, the federal government to see if we can't get some help to build some affordable housing within the city limits. And also, I'd like to get some affordable houses within neighborhoods. I look at a place like Town and Country. I wish I could get every single person out of there into a neighborhood in Binghamton. And of course, the problem is that there's no houses for sale in the city of Binghamton. And we have this dichotomy, that we have this relationship with the university, that the university is what keeps our economy going. And so we need the students, and the student housing is very important to us. On the other hand, people that want to live in a nice neighborhood, they can't find a house. So what do? Well, there's a lot of houses that are distressed, that we have these out-of-town landlords and even some in-town landlords. And I don't want to say that all of our landlords are bad. Most of our landlords are very responsible and good landlords. But we have these bad players that buy distressed properties, and they don't take care of them, and they just become more distressed. They have no interest in our neighborhood or our community. So I want to get my hands on those before these bad players get it. So
what do you mean by that?
Well, I have, my brother is probably one of the most well-known real estate people in town. My wife's in real estate. My son sells mortgages. My son-in-law sells mortgages. So I have a lot of connections within that community. So I want to have meetings with all of the players in this area, and say, if you see a house like that coming up for sale, contact me first.
As the mayor?
As the mayor, contact me. We will find a local person that can buy it, and with that, it takes me to the $46 million that we got for the COVID money. We can use that money. I'd like to set a couple $1 million aside so that we can, through the land bank, or if they have the infrastructure to do it, but I want to be able to direct the land bank on the properties that we're going to deal with. So we then can grant the money to fix the house up, get it ready, and get it to a first-time home buyer or a young family that wants to live in there. They'd have to qualify. We don't want to sell it to a rich person. They have to agree to live there for, let's say, 5 or 6 years before they would sell it. And this would then allow people to begin accumulating wealth in their lives in a way that they haven't been able to. There's people, as I say, in town and country that have been paying rent there for many years. Mrs. Marshall over there, a friend of mine, she's been there for 30 years. So she could have been, the amount of rent that she pays, she could have had a mortgage all of these years and passed that money on to her family, but she didn't, because she didn't have the opportunity. So I want to get people this sort of opportunity.
So that's utilizing the existing stock. How would you leverage public funds to create more housing stock?
Well, if you look at 30 Front Street, which is for the higher end income, it could not have been built without the initial $5 million grant that they were given to clear that land, to tear down the old hotel, to clear the land and get it ready. So we need to find more partners that will build. So we can use, again, there's only $23 million left of the 46, by the way. We have 4 years to spend it, and it seems the administration was on a 4-month schedule and not a 4-year schedule. But
this is the ARPA funds. We'll circle back to that if we have time.
So at any rate, we can set aside a couple $1 million of that money and see if we can't talk to the county, the state, the federal government, see if we can get more money set aside, and then we can go to a builder and say, we'll grant you this money. The same way we granted, why would we grant $5 million to 50 Front Street, is a jewel. It's absolutely made the West Side completely, that area completely different. So I love it. But we granted them $5 million. So let's get $5 million to grant somebody to build something that we can get affordable housing in. And there's areas that we can do that.
I want to shift a little bit, and you did touch on it, code enforcement.
Right.
A lot of these dilapidated properties that you bring up, a lot of them presently have code violations.
Right.
What's your assessment on how that process is currently working in the city, and what additions, what changes would you make to clean up some of these properties?
It works slowly, for the most part. The laws, we need to strengthen the laws so that the bad player actually has, is hurt by getting a violation. Now, somebody gets a fine, they're making so much money that they just pay the fine and then we'll start from scratch, and they don't really fix what they're supposed to fix. And our code enforcement, we have code enforcement officers that are very dedicated and they work very, very hard, but they're understaffed. So we need to get more players in that office. And again, I think that we could use a couple $100,000 of the ARPA funds, because it's for the neighborhood, to temporarily hire. Let's say we hired them, we have 4 years to spend the money, so let's hire a couple for 4 years until we catch up with the code violations. And we need to maybe talk to the courts, maybe add a judge, a housing judge, a housing court to deal with this, because our courts are backed up as it is. So a small violation, it'd take a long time to go through our court system, and so we need to fix that. And then, as far as the everyday stuff about the tall grass and all that, I would like to increase, by hiring college kids with lawnmowers. Give them, have them work for the Parks Department. We hire a lot of kids for our parks every summer, so we could just hire a few more and have them maybe take over that job of cutting the lawns who are in code violation.
So that would be a city-run program?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, the city would definitely run it, without a doubt.
Are you concerned about legal ramifications of the city managing other people's properties?
Well, no. A lot of these lawns, what happens is the Parks Department, again, very dedicated people in there, but there's so much work to do that they don't have enough help to get to the lawns. What happens is if you have a code violation, you have to wait, I don't know what it is, 2 weeks or something like that. After that violation, if we don't get a response or they don't cut the lawn, we then, by law, can cut the lawn, and then we send a bill. We put the bill on their taxes, on their property tax. We add a bill to that so that the owner ends up paying us to cut the lawn. But the problem is that the Parks Department is behind, that you might wait all summer sometimes, which I did on the south side a couple of times for a lawn to be cut. And I don't blame the Parks Department, I blame the fact that there's just not enough help to get it done. So I'm going to change that.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to transition to a regular issue that has shown up in Binghamton city politics over the years, the sewage treatment plant.
Let me get it.
So the current administration, Rich David's administration, pushed to consider private management of the plant a few years ago. You have been vocally opposed to that.
Yes.
I assume that would still be the case under your administration?
Absolutely.
And so is there anything you would change in the plant's management structure or in the style of how the operations of the plant are carried out?
Have to take a look. I mean, Binghamton owns it, Johnson City owns it, we're the primary, and the board is appointed by the two mayors. And one thing I would do is I would make sure that the people that I appoint are experts in sewage treatment. Maybe find people that used to work there or whatever. I wouldn't make it a political appointment.
Are the current members political, in your opinion?
Well, I know that he appointed Chris Papistrat, for instance. Chris, I don't know if he knows about the sewage treatment plant. So, I would find people that know about sewage treatment to put them on the board. And I think I would just keep an eye on it more, as opposed to changing the structure of it. But I would talk to the next mayor of Johnson City and have the two of us have a meeting with the chairperson, the current chair of the board, and talk about how can we make this better.
Mm-hmm. One of the items that came up earlier this year was a proposed audit or maintenance assessment of the plant, which a number of folks voiced opposition to, believing that was a segue for a reignition, if you will, of the privatization process. At the time, you advocated against that, you voted against that. A few weeks ago in the plant's budget, They were considering part of that budget was a comprehensive asset management plan. And they ultimately reduced that budget line from $500,000 down to $300,000. Are you comfortable that that itself was not what was being led to through that previous audit process?
The last vote we had on going from 500 to 300 on the asset management, that wasn't political. That was simply making sure that we had enough money in there to do a proper audit of the sewage treatment plant. And the original problem with it was going to cost $66,000 was to do an audit of the maintenance. And there was a company called, I want to say Olivia, but it's, can't think of the name of the company.
Veolia.
Veolia, yeah. So Veolia had worked in putting equipment in the plant. And, you know, they're well known around the country for working on sewage treatment plants. And so they do know what they're doing. But because they had put the equipment in the plant, and a lot of that equipment that they put in wasn't working properly, I just felt that it was a conflict of interest to hire a company to come in to tell us what our workers were doing right or wrong on the maintenance when the machines that they put in weren't working properly.
And you're not worried that may also happen with this?
And when the mayor had put out a request to see who would come in to, put a bid on to be the company that would manage the sewage treatment plant, they were number one on the list. So here they were coming in to do an inspection on our maintenance, on our employees, and if they gave a bad report, maybe the mayor then would say, oh, well, this is proof that we need to hire a private company. So I just think that it was a complete mistake to even consider them for it.
And you're not concerned that's not going to be the end result of this comprehensive asset management plan?
No, I don't. No, because we definitely need, I mean, it's $300 million. So we need to have the maintenance inspected. We have to make sure that our employees are doing the proper work. No doubt about that. So I'm all for the inspection. I just didn't want that company to inspect. I want it to be fair to our employees.
And I want to ask you another fact question quick. The restoration and rehabilitation plan of the sewage treatment plant, that's been going on for now over 10 years.
Yes.
What is your estimate on the final, or as of the end of last month, the cost, the funds that have gone into that project that have
well, let's go back 8 years. So the previous administration, they had hired
I'm asking for a number.
A number.
Your estimate of the cost of that
$275 million.
Okay. It's slightly more, 278.
Okay. 278.
Only 260 or so have been approved at this point through
Right.
City Council's
Right, so
processes.
278 million. So my feeling is that the previous administration had a designer design a building, a new building. It was going to cost $150 million. It was completely approved by the DEC across the board. It was financed. It was ready to go. This administration came in and decided, no, we want to design our own building. We want our own plan. Now, they didn't ask the citizens of Binghamton if they wanted to go from $150 million to $300 million. 278 million, excuse me. So that's what happened. Now, to me, it should have stayed at 150 million. It was approved by the DEC. But also, what happened here was that the mayor refused to sign the project labor agreement with our local trade unions. So instead of using local labor, so what did we spend? Maybe you know the answer, but we spent like $50 million on labor. All that money left town. Here we are in the city of Binghamton. We're paying for this, and we're taking our money and we're sending it somewhere else. When if the money was spent here, It would have gone to the small businesses here. It would have gone to mortgages here. It would have put roofs on houses and painted houses, painted people's homes. But instead, it went somewhere else. So I believe that that is a crime, actually. But
I want to switch, and you mentioned it earlier, but I want to switch to policing and criminal justice. The city went through the reimagining process with all the other municipalities in upstate New York earlier this year. Were you satisfied with that plan?
Well, I think we did some good things on it. One of them, we added. There was a lot of people in my party that, which some of my votes on city council, I get more trouble with Democrats than I do Republicans. But I like to vote for what I think is right for the people of Binghamton.
And on policing issues,
I don't think of party.
Regularly sided with.
You know, so I believe that we did some good things on that collaborative. One of them being, we made an agreement with the Broome County Mental Health Association that they could be on call if our police officers feel that this is a mental health situation. It's not somebody that needs to be arrested or committing a crime. They're just having a mental breakdown of some sort, that they can call this person from the mental association, and they've been doing it. And that person then goes to the call. If the police feel then that it's safe for them to leave, then they can leave and they can go off and spend their time patrolling the streets, which is better for them than spending, lots of times they'll spend hours at these calls. So I think that was a very good move, and it's better for the person who's going through the problem. The person having a mental breakdown, it's going to be much better with a professional. And then we also changed that, rather than, if they need to be taken to the psych ward, that we do it in an ambulance now. We don't put them in the police car and just make them more upset and make it worse. So I liked that very much.
Is there anything that wasn't included that you would have liked to see in that plan?
Well, we also worked on diversifying the police department. We hired an officer whose job, he was a retired officer named Officer Woody. And so his job now is to diversify, find people, diverse people, and see if we can't diversify what we've said for a couple of decades now. We've been talking about diversifying the police department more. So that's what his job is now. So I was very happy with that. Also, I'm committed to keeping the collaborative alive, so that as problems arise, we have to keep the community and the police. We have to keep that, we have to keep that going. We have to keep that dialogue going, so that people don't feel that they're not being listened to. So I'm going to keep that going, and we will continue to listen to people.
Mm-hmm. I want to wrap up, and you had mentioned ARPA earlier, the American Rescue Plan Act funds. The city first accepted that earlier this summer, $46 million in its entirety. A lot of specifics as to this program and a lot of the developments of how that's been carried out over the last few months. But the mayor has said that there will be funds for the next mayor to spend. You've mentioned a few things, but I wanted to give you a chance to discuss any other ways you would spend those funds.
Well, we need to save some of it. We have 4 years to spend it. So there's some problems that are going to, we have this new strain of COVID coming through, and we should put some aside and say we're going to save this and not promise it yet, to see what else might arise as problems go. We need to, we could be helping people we could be helping landlords that there's federal money for the landlords, right? But that money will be gone eventually. So I think we should save a little bit for that, so that, we have some very good landlords. They don't want to evict the people that are living there. So we can try to make them whole before that sort of terrible thing happens, so people aren't put out on the street. We could spend money for childcare. My thought is that we could find we could find people that have the the spirit of wanting to go into business for themselves in the child care area, but they're unable to afford to start the business. So we could grant them money to get their equipment, and the agreement would be that they have to charge an affordable price for for the daycare stuff. We could even go out and buy a building actually, with the money and say this is going to be for child care, and you people hire the people that are. We don't hire the people that are going to run it. It becomes their building and their business, but the agreement is that it's for affordable. I also spoke to the Eric over at the incubator, and I'd like to finance some startups that would help our neighborhoods and help our city. And so if you have the entrepreneurial spirit and you've never been able to use it because you've never been able to have you've never had the opportunity because of money, okay, so he will teach them his way of doing a business plan, which is sort of a new way of doing a business plan. And then they come to the city. Either we'll do it through the BLDC or our planning department, but the BLDC, we already do loans, so we have the infrastructure for it. They then bring their business plan to us. If the business plan is good enough, then we can actually grant them, let's say we take $2 million. We can grant them $40,000 or $50,000 to really start their business. So we can do 40 or 50 businesses, and even if only 20 of them make it, it didn't cost the taxpayers of Binghamton any money, but yet we've started 20 businesses, we've created jobs, we get the money flowing through our community, and I think it would be a great thing, and that's the plan for that. And also, if you make $100,000 or less, sounds like a lot of money, but if you have a family, it's really not, and you've been unable to save to put the roof on your house or to paint your house, we could grant the money to do that. We could grant you $15,000. If we put $1 million of that money aside for that, we could do how many? A couple hundred houses, right? And that would help every neighborhood in the city. Anyway, there's so many. We had, and the mayor, by the way, this administration, they spent the money without asking the citizens what they wanted to do with the money. The Democrats on city council, we actually had a public forum where people on Zoom, we had people call in and talk about what they wanted us to do with the money. And we can help a lot of people. We can make sure that if we save that money and then suddenly we see that there's a family that's not eating, we can help them with all kinds of ways.
You held that forum and with your fellow Democrats in City Council. You held out that forum, and a lot of the proposals you voted against. So not a lot of the proposals, but some of the proposals coming down from the mayor's office that you disagreed with, you voted against over the last few months. Why not bring some of your own proposals before City Council through RLs to use the ARPA funds?
Well, we intend to do that, but
why not already?
Well, that's a very good question. But the City Council is controlled by the majority. So basically, whatever the mayor asks for, the 4 City Council Republicans, they do it. So the $23 million that the mayor received, as I say, he was on a 4-month schedule, and we have 4 years to spend it. So he's already promised that money before we were able to even come forward with an RL to spend the money somewhere else.
All right, that's about our time. But Mr. Burns, thank you so much for joining me.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.